Despite still being a very mediocre photographer, I've actually been shooting film for around 8 years. And over that time, I've made my fair share of mistakes, from underexposed photos to light leaks and even sometimes blank rolls. So I've looked back at some of the best tips and hacks that I've learned along the way and put them together so that you can get the most out of your film photography. Now, of course, you can do simple things like overexpose by one stop to make sure that you don't get bad exposures, but I wanted to make sure that I was giving you some more unique tips that you might not have heard before, and the last one has absolutely saved a load of my rolls. For the first few years that I was shooting, I didn't really know anything about the different kinds of light, and I was just kind of shooting whenever I wanted. I still managed to get some pretty good shots, but there wasn't really that understanding about light or anything like that. That was until I started to learn about cinematography and how they use layers of light in order to create more depth in films. Put simply, layers of light can kind of create a more 3D kind of immersive feeling in an image. So if you look at this shot, there's dark, then light, then dark, then light. This picture pretty definitively shows what layers of light can do in terms of showing that depth and making it feel like a more 3D immersive picture. The easiest way to do this when you're out and about is to try and shoot from the shadow side of something. This is how people do it in movies. They always shoot from the darker, negative fill side of someone's face. You can do this in real life with all kinds of things. You know, you might be out and about somewhere and you can see there's some very obvious layers of light. You can use them to create that depth. So no more flat images, look for those layers of light. A few years ago, I thought that I was at a point where I needed to upgrade my camera. So I got the Pentax 6.7, the kind of camera that if you dropped it on the floor, you'd be checking if the floor was okay. This is one of the best film cameras ever made. It has some of the most amazing lenses available to it, and it's medium format. So naturally, I'm thinking, this is going to make me a better photographer. How wrong I was. As it turns out, the best camera is the best camera for you, not just the most expensive or best camera in general. It's the one that suits you and does the job for you. If a camera's too expensive and you worry about taking it out, it's probably not for you. If there's 12 pictures per roll and you ain't got enough money to shoot like that, probably not for you. If lenses are $1,000 each and you can only afford to eat beans, that's not for you. This simple realization made me go back to the Nikon FM2 and focus on the things that mattered way more. Focusing on my style, focusing on learning, and focusing on trying new things. Don't worry so much about the camera, worry about what you're shooting, why you're shooting it, and how you're shooting it. Back in 2018, when I was hitting the streets of Manchester with my little Nikon FM, I was pretty much shooting everything at f1.8. I don't know why, I genuinely just thought it was the best for some reason. I didn't realize it then, but there were so many reasons why I shouldn't have been constantly shooting wide open like that. First, you'll often miss the shot because you're shooting at f1.8 or whatever. It means that you have to nail focus every single time. You're not giving yourself any leeway whatsoever. Also, the overall sharpness is just way less. If you're shooting at f1.8, it's not going to be a very sharp image. Obviously, whatever's in focus will be sharp, but everything else isn't going to be. And sometimes if you're shooting something that at infinity, it's not going to be a very sharp image. Now, I'm not saying that sharpness is the be-all and end-all of an image. You can have great pictures that aren't sharp. I'm just saying that's a fact. And basically, there aren't that many times where you need to shoot completely wide open. If shallow depth of field is what you're relying on to create depth, then you're really missing out on some of the way more important ways to create depth, like using layers of light, as I explained in the first part of the video. So yeah, usually f4 or up to f8 is a really good place to be in terms of aperture. f8 to f10 are what's called critical aperture for most lenses, and that means that it's like the sharpest point of your lens. So f1.8, usually isn't necessary. This one's so simple, but man, if I'd been doing it from the start, I'd probably have like 20 good photos instead of 10. So many times I've seen a really good moment and I go to take a picture of it and that's it. I just take one picture of it. I'm like, yeah, that was great. There we go. And it was not great. Always take multiple pictures. If there's something that's happening in front of you and you're like, oh, I've got to get this, don't just go up and take one picture. Especially as people that shoot film, we don't know whether we've got that in focus. We don't know whether we've actually captured the composition we want to capture. We don't know. We can't leave it up to chance. Take a few frames, at least 2 or 3 frames, if there's a moment that really gets you. Now this final one is also quite simple, but it has saved quite a few rolls of mine. And it's a silly thing, but it's really important to know. Not too long ago, I went out on a hike with a load of friends and we were just getting ready to set off. So I was like, I'm going to put a new roll of film in my camera. I opened the back of my camera up and what do you know? There's a roll already in there. So I'm like, this is probably done for now, but there was actually like 20 shots left or something. So I was like, okay, I'm going to carry on. And as it turns out, I actually only lost like 5 shots. The truth is, actually, because your film is tightly wound around the spool, it creates its own kind of barrier against the light. Now, obviously, you couldn't leave your camera open for like hours and hours and expect to have your images be fine, but a few seconds, even in bright daylight, you'll probably only lose like 4 or 5 pictures. That's what happened for me. So today's been short and sweet. I really hope those tips were really helpful. It's not going to be long until I'm releasing new videos from my European tour, which I'm super excited to release. But until that time, I hope you have the best week and just sort of chill and hang out. Take loads of photos, have a good time. Take multiple photos if you see a good thing. And yeah, take care.